Hey, hello students. In this session, let's study about the function basics. So what is functions? We can think function as subpart of the program. So function is a series of statements that have been grouped together to perform a specific task, and name is given to it. And there may be one or more inputs and outputs. And also there can be no inputs and outputs. If the function does not produce any output, we call it as void functions. And usually we name the function based on the task that function performs. For example, if a function receives two numbers and returns sum of these two numbers, we may name the function as summations or additions. It is a totally programmer's choice. But it's always better to give meaningful names to functions. This makes program easy to understand. And why should we use functions? Using functions, we can divide a program into small pieces, which improves the readabilities. Moreover, if you define functions, you can use the function anywhere in the program. So it will increase the reusability and remove the duplicate codes. Let's see the demo code for this example. Okay, first, let me compile this program and see the outputs. So this program asks me to enter input. So here it's waiting user input. So if I put 1, it prints sum is 55. It's printing here. So it depending on the user's input, whether it is 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, it perform differently. But because here I entered 1, the program performed these operations, which adds the numbers between min and max. So here min is 0 and max is 10. If we add all the numbers between 0 to 10, that's 55. So we print 55. And still waiting on my inputs. So, okay, so in order to terminate this program, I should enter the numbers 5. Okay, so okay. So if you look at this program, in case 2 also calculates the sum of the number between min and max. Here, it adds all the numbers between 23, and for case 3, it adds all the numbers between 40 and 50. And for case 4, it also adds all the numbers between 60 and 70. So this program does same thing, very similar thing, depending on the user's input, but only the difference is the minimum and max number. But if you look at this source code, it's very difficult to read and understand because there are so many for loops. And as you can see here, there are many duplicate codes. Here, these codes are duplicate here, duplicate codes. So in this one and this one is also duplicate code, and this one also duplicate codes. And if you look at this one, these assignment statements are different, but they are very similar patterns. Only the difference is this number. So these programs are difficult to read and understand because there are many duplicate codes and similar patterns appears in many different program locations. if we use functions, we can make this program very simple and easy to understand. Let's compare this program with the program version using functions. Okay, this program does the same thing as this one. Let me this one so that you can easily compare. So this program also received the user's input, and based on depending on the user's input, it called this range summation with different numbers. So this range summations is a functions which receive two types of parameter, mean and max, and it just adds all the numbers between this mean and max. So this duplicate code are copy and paste to this inside of this function, range of summations. And each case, we call this range summations with different minimum and max number. So as you can see here, these duplicate codes are removed here. These duplicate code are removed in this code by using functions. And as you can see here, it's much more easy to read and understand. It looks very simple compared to this left side of the program. Like these similar patterns of assignments are removed in this right side of the programs. So using a function, we can make a program very simple. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. So this is demo code we just explored. For the student who saw functions for the first time, so who have not studied C before, let me briefly introduce you very basic stuff here quickly. This code shows how to define and call functions. Here we are declaring functions. This tells compiler how to interpret calls. So all the function declaration must come before the function call. So this is how you declare the function. You put return type of the function name here, and put the parameter list within the round bracket and put the semicolon. This is how you declare the functions. And here we are defining functions. This is a function body. We specify what function should do inside this function body. In this example, some order numbers between this mean and max range is what function should do. So this is how you define your functions. So note that the return types and function name and parameter list are written here are exactly the same as a function declaration. So these two refers to same functions. And here we are using a function, the range summation functions. This is how you use already defined functions. Put the name of the function, and if necessary, pass some of the value to the function within round bracket like this. So what I mean by if necessary is that if the function requires some input values, here range summations function requires two int values, so we are passing two int type of value here when we are calling these functions. So when we are using function like this way, we call this as a function call statements. So in computer science, we call this as a function call statement. So this is a very basic stuff in functions. I'm sure most of you have already learned this stuff in C programming course. Okay, so now let's talk about callee and caller and parameters. So what is the difference between callee and caller? So here we define function name average here. This is a function definitions. As the name indicates, this function receives two double type of value, and calculates the average of them and returns it. Here we call these average functions by passing x and y variable, which is this one, which is a double type and set to 1.1 and 2.1 respectively. As I said earlier, this we call a function call statements. So at caller is the function that calls another functions, whereas callee is a function that was called. So here main, because this statement inside of main, here the caller is a main and callee is a average functions. And callee and caller can share the values through passing parameters and return values. So in main function, it passes the value of variable x and y through passing arguments. We call these arguments. We will talk about the arguments in later sessions. And the values are mapped, these values, argument values are mapped to the function's parameters. So this is a function parameters, a and b. So these x are mapped to a and y are mapped to b. We will talk more about the parameter and argument in later sessions, so don't worry if you don't understand it. And callee can also return the value to the caller through the return statements. So this is a return statement. Here it returns the average value with a return keyword. Then the return value is stored on the average variable in the caller functions. So this is how the caller and callee share the values. And note that the x, y, avg, and a, b are all local variables. So a and b are local variables inside of average, and x, y, avg are local variables of the main functions. So one function cannot access another function's local variables because local variables are scoped inside of the declared functions. So the scope of the local variable is inside of declared functions or block. Here, this block, open and close brackets. So variables that are declared within the body of the function definitions are said to be local to the functions or to have that function as their scope. So if a variable is local to some function, we sometimes simply call it as a local variable without specifying the functions. So this is an error because A and B are local variable of average functions. So it cannot be referenced in the main functions. Only average function can use A and B variable. So if you declare the variable in a function definitions and then declare another variable of the same name in the main functions of the program, then these two variables are two different variables even though they have the same name. Okay, so in these sessions, we talk about the function basics very quickly. We talk about the function declaration, definition, and calls, and we saw how caller and callee functions are sharing values through parameter passing example. And we also talk about the scope of parameters and the local variables. So in next session, we will learn more interesting concepts in C++, such as call by value reference and function overloading. So see you in next section.